Would like to briefly take a moment and say thank you to everyone who has continued to join us over at the Florida Maquis Patreon channel. The Holy Bible teaches us, rejoice always, pray without ceasing, give thanks in all circumstances, for this is the will of God in Christ Jesus for you. If you'd like to join us over there, it's only $1 per month at the base level, and even less than that if you sign up for an entire year, and no matter what level you choose, it's fully refundable. First 90 days, no questions asked. What's the difference between YouTube and Patreon? At Patreon, we can take the gloves off. There are no censors. We have, of course, the Patreon firewall, and then we also have Vimeo that we're partnering with, and that gives us one extra layer of protection where we can speak our minds and we can take advantage of rights that we used to enjoy in this country freely. Would love to have you over there. There are hundreds of exclusive videos never before seen here on YouTube. Please, if you have the ability, would love to have you over there. You won't regret it. God bless all of you, and thank you so much. There's a very specific detail about Antarctica that even those who research it don't really know. Antarctica is 2 places, not 1. There's an old Periscope Films reel from years ago that I've been trying to dig back up that talks about when they sent Operation High Jump down there, one of their goals was to put to rest the idea that it was not 1 place, that it was really 2, West Antarctica and East Antarctica. And you can kind of see it in this image here from above. This part here at the top, this peninsula, is a very different place than the main body of Eastern Antarctica. Now, there's recently been a revelation out of New Zealand that would stun most of you. Most haven't heard about it because they have kept this story very quiet. But to reveal it and have it make sense, we have to start someplace else. The Roman Empire. Places like Hibernia, Macedonia, Cappadocia, Aquitania, Noricum, Colchis. See, most people, when you hear names like this, they wouldn't have any idea where you were talking about or even when. Dacia, Moesia, Pannonia, Hibernia, of course, as you can see on the map up here, upper left. Well, that's Ireland now. Caledonia, Scotland. Some might know this, but the vast majority won't. Bhaetia, Betia, area just north of Italy. Sarmatia. The point that I'm making is this. Over time, the names of things change. And what they are referred to as in antiquity are not what they are referred to as now. Here's another map that would confuse most. Aquitania, Narbonensis, Bithynia, Basternae. People are like, what planet are you talking about? Where are these make-believe places? Well, these are real places. They're just referred to differently now. Largely due to the Dark Ages. So much was lost in that intervening 500 to 600 years. And when we came out of the Dark Ages into the Renaissance, things were different. The map on the left is an official layout of what Antarctica looks like. The map on the right was created in the 1700s. 1739 to be exact. Now, maps in the 1700s were very difficult to create. Not only did you have to have the knowledge, but you had to have the parchment, you had to have the ink, you had to have the opportunity. It wasn't like today where you can just get online and create something. That they were as close to the reality as they were proves something. Either they were there or they had access to some type of technology or ancient mapping ability that far, far outstripped their technology at the time. It shows Antarctica as two places. That's what we know it to be, West Antarctica and East Antarctica. But instead of being frozen over with ice, it shows a glacial sea in between. Now, the part that most miss is that they have the orientation right. You would have had to have been there or have information from someone who was and saw it from above. The peninsula part is closest to South America, here. This large expanse, closest to what they referred to as at the time as Nouvelle Holland. Now, of course, being known as Australia. They had the orientation right. They had the separation right. They even have the general size of the entire area right. They had to have been there. And if the map was created in 1739, they were there far before. And it was a very different place. They wouldn't have just assumed a sea if they hadn't been inland. These map makers, this was what they did. It was their legacy. And given that they have so much of South America right, Africa right, Australia right, that they would have just made up what you're seeing here is just beyond the ability for any reasonable person to accept. Now, here's a story that's going to blow your mind. This is a monument created by the Maori people. Some pronounce it Maori. It's called, are you ready for this? Navigator of the Heavens. It's at Scott Base in Antarctica. Why would the Maori people create a carving, a monument in Antarctica that basically looks like a giant tower with a ship on top of it, and name it Navigator of the Heavens? Navigator of the Heavens, Pau Wenua, Maori carved post, New Zealand, Scott Base, Antarctica, with the Aurora Australis as the backdrop. This is from the Antarctic Report on Twitter. How could that be? This is another carving from the Maori people that ties into another part of the story of Antarctica that I think is written down somewhere that we just haven't been told. And certain elite groups of people have access to it. Because they created a character in the HBO series Game of Thrones that was wildly popular for years, that looks exactly like one of the carvings made by the Maori, or Maori people. The only real source of true science left, and I've stated this before and I'll say it again, is in the community creating art, creating online worlds, because they're the only ones with open minds. The image on the left, official map of the extent of the sea ice in Antarctica. The red is the land above sea level. On the right is a map of what could have been Antarctica, just with different names. But the layout is perfect. Because as we know, in antiquity, things were referred to differently. So anyone trying to look up the history of Antarctica probably is going to go run into a dead end because it wasn't referred to as Antarctica at that time. They had different names for things, and the Dark Ages makes it almost impossible. There's a story on YouTube. There's a guy who talks about this. Decebalus and the Dacian Wars. Where's Dacia? Most would have to ask that question. And who was Decebalus? You could probably discern from looking at the imagery here that, oh, this looks kind of Roman. So it probably has something to do with that. What if this applied elsewhere? An entire history lost. Groups of people that showed up all around the world and just assimilated into cultures that could have come from places that were here. How could a map maker in 1739 have been so right? Shackleton's expedition wasn't until the 1800s, and even then he only landed on an island and said that he sighted the coast from the perspective of one island. There's a map 100 years predating him that literally has the separation of the two pieces of land correct, the orientation correct, in many places the coast without the ice, and a large glacial sea. This is the idea that I think they're trying to keep tamped down about Antarctica, at least in North America. That the reality of that UFO report that nobody's talking about anymore just got wiped off the headlines might have been poorly trying to point people away from the true reality. Which brings us back to here. The truth is like a lion. You don't have to defend it. Let it loose and it'll defend itself. You look into the story of Antarctica and apply good historical technique, without a doubt, there's a lot more out there than what's being revealed. And I'll leave it there. God bless. Like, share, subscribe. Pray for those, of course, still in Surfside, suffering, having loss. And we will see you tonight over on Twitch. Would like to briefly take a moment and say thank you to everyone who has continued to join us over at the Florida Maquis Patreon channel. The Holy Bible teaches us, rejoice always, pray without ceasing, give thanks in all circumstances, for this is the will of God in Christ Jesus for you. If you'd like to join us over there, it's only $1 US per month at the base level, and even less than that if you sign up for an entire year, and no matter what level you choose, it's fully refundable. First 90 days, no questions asked. What's the difference between YouTube and Patreon? At Patreon, we can take the gloves off. There are no censors. We have, of course, the Patreon firewall, and then we also have Vimeo that we're partnering with, and that gives us one extra layer of protection where we can speak our minds and we can take advantage of rights that we used to enjoy in this country freely. Would love to have you over there. There are hundreds of exclusive videos never before seen here on YouTube. Please, if you have the ability, would love to have you over there. You won't regret it. God bless all of you, and thank you so much.